So about the Gramsci, we will say he is the second greatest philosopher in Marxism after Marx, and he belongs to South Italy, contemporary of Mussolini. Mussolini, who was Mussolini? He was a fascist party leader, a form of capitalism. It is, and put Gramsci behind the bars. Why he put Gramsci behind the bars? Because there was a fear of a revolution, as uh, Gramsci founding member of the Communist Party of Italy. So also there is a lack of coherence in the writings of Gramsci because he wrote on a piece of paper and published prison notebook later. So why revolution in Russia was a main concern. Uh, why revolution in Russia, not in Western capitalist society, was a big concern for the Gramsci because, as said by the Marx, that capitalism will come out of its own, as there was a maximum contradiction, and in Western there was a capitalism, so there was maximum contradiction there, but revolution happened in Russia. That was a place where capitalism was not in so extreme form. So he moved to North Italy. Factory council movement done by was happening there, and however failed and experience helped him to understand and revisited the Marxian theory of history. So in the historical materialism, the Marx said he is giving the scientific theory, and he criticized Hegel in respect that his idea of state is not is false consciousness. So here Marx theory of history again revisited by Gramsci here, and he is emphasizing where he got influenced by the Benedetto Croce, the role of culture factor in shaping history. So basically the Marx only focusing on basic structure. Now Gramsci will emphasize more on equally emphasize on superstructure also. So cautioned economic determinism, the role of superstructure in shaping history, and defined revolution in material structure, and a mental revolution will require not mere evolution of base autonomy, but still economic structure is the basic structure. Okay, so therefore there are relative autonomous means basic structure. Then comes civil society, that is education, media, church. Then comes state and civil society is the integral state. So Gramsci bringing Marxism closer to Hegelianism because he brings the part of culture there, and also he cautioned economic determinism by saying that they is relative autonomous. Superstructure is relative autonomous, and we can't say no. We can't say that the relation is so simplistic. So view of cause and effect as done by Marx is not appropriate. Extremely complicated multi-linear process it is. History change when all the three layer changes, not just a basic structure change and other will change automatically. So no single revolution, as what said by Marx. Gramsci said revolution both at level of basic structure as well as the superstructure, and strategy of revolution vary from state to state. Means दो तरह के स्टेट है, ट्रांसपेरेंट एंड ओपेक. ट्रांसपेरेंट लाइक सिजरिस्ट regime, यहाँ पे सिविल सोसाइटी नहीं है, सिंगल रेवोल्यूशन चलेगा वहाँ पे. एंड देयर इज ओपेक स्टेट वेयर लाइक ब्रिटिश यूएस, जहाँ पे सिविल सोसाइटी है बट दिस सिविल सोसाइटी हाइड्स द ट्रू नेचर ऑफ स्टेट. सो even here civil society is deep state, cushion, shock absorber, first layer of defense, soft power attraction. So it is protecting the state and building the hegemonic idea. So restricting revolution, manufacturing concept hegemony by intellectuals, leadership of capitalist class maintained by them. So capitalism as a common sense. So common sense, hegemony, manufacturing concept. So these all things are done by the civil society. So Gramsci like hegemony is a exploitation, where exploit feel happiness in his exploitation, like British rule blessing in disguise. So Gramsci will emphasize on the part of intellectuals, but for Marx, intellectuals are like creating the false consciousness as what he criticized Hegel. And Gandhi Harijan debate, we also know false consciousness got highlighted by the B. Ambedkar. So no need of intellectuals develop true consciousness on their own, else new exploiter will come like USSR and China. So also there is a person Lenin who in his communist pamphlet had something, who is a pamphlet like what is to be done. He said Communist Party is like the vanguard of revolution. So Marx didn't support the concept of any party. But Lenin said there will be a party known as Communist Party, and Rosa Luxemburg criticized Lenin because uh, even leadership of proletariat did not come in these states. Peter, who denies his master, will be the line we will use here. Even gave Marxism as an ideology. That's why. So two things like Communist Party and ideology like Marxism, the both things never ever is supported by the Marx. And here Lenin emphasizing the things just opposed to the ideas of Marx. So that's why he is in Peter who denies his master. But Gramsci picked both the things, and Gramsci combined the idea of Marx and Lenin, still closer to Lenin. How? Because he said the working class required intellectual, and but these intellectual are organic मतलब वहीं से आएंगे उनके अंदर से आएगा. And he also said that the Communist Party act as organic intellectual working class, and ideology is required. So ideology is a way that he displaces the ideology of dominant class like hegemony and establishes an ideology of exploitative class, that is counter hegemony. So the similar we will link with Brahmanism versus Dalitism and patriarchy versus feminism. So the Dalitalism is like ideology of exploited class, feminism is like ideology of exploited class. So build the counter hegemony. So Ambedkar ji is the organic intellectual of Dalit in India. So all, even he said that all humans are intellectuals. However, human being doesn't perform social function of intellectual. All humans are intellectuals. By this, he brings in the confidence among the workers. And social function of intellectuals means to create the counter hegemony, make socialism as common sense, war opposition, protectorate war, to capture the civil society, and then the war of movement. So in this way, he also emphasizing that there can't be a single revolution. And when he's saying the integral state, we also keep in mind Locke tried to show civil society in Western countries separated from government. So they will show that civil society is separated, but actually it is not separated. It is acting as cushion, shock absorber, first line of defense, soft power, attraction. Also, Gramsci emphasized on two types of intellectuals, organic and traditional. And the most important thing for Gramsci is to bring a grand coalition by combining the organic and traditional intellectuals, and they will build the counter hegemony. In the counter hegemony to make a socialism as a common sense, and then direct attack, front attack against it. That is under the war of maneuver. So, like 2019, there is a question according to Gramsci, hegemony is primarily based on the organization of consent. So, hegemony is a question of hegemony. So, and hegemony is based on the organization of consent. So yes, this thing is about the intellectuals breaking the consent, making the common sense, and the traditional intellectuals, organic intellectuals, combining them, building the counter hegemony. And also in 2016, the concept of hegemony again. 15, the Gramsci notion of organic intellectuals. So 2013, distinguish between hegemony and domination. So hegemony is like the common sense. You are itself. You want to accept that even you are suffering under it. So critically taking away your thinking capacity. Critical examining the Gramsci concept of hegemony again. So the single thing that is again and again they are asking the hegemony. So intellectuals like intro of Gramsci. So then Gramsci said biased role of intellectual, nexus between intellectual class and dominant class. Okay, so intellectual class and dominant class एक साथ मिले हुए हैं. So intellectual class are deputies, DEPUTs of the dominant class. Idea of ruling class equals to ruling ideas, because intellectuals building the common sense, manufacturing consent. So two groups, organic intellectuals. So in reference to rise in capitalism, when capitalism was rising, with emergence of capitalism, other classes beside capitalists also came into existence, like supervisor, engineers, public servant, fulfill different functions as well with the capitalist system. In case of India, with British zamindars and civil servants, so like us, also came, so played an important role in manufacturing the domination of British. So organic intellectuals promote such values, support system, domination of first class. But traditional in reference to capitalism existed before capitalism, like church fathers. So feudal society promoting value supporting aristocracy. So they resisted change. But once capitalist society got established, started supporting the capitalist class. So capitalist class integrated them also. So with the rise of capitalism, organic intellectual like supervisor engineers, as seen in the case of India, British zamindar and civil servant. So they promote such values positively. But traditionally they restricted first, but then slowly when the system established, they also they got integrated into the system. So for Gramsci, traditional intellectuals preserve and legitimize the existing order because वो चलते आ रहे हैं ना इसलिए. The traditional intellectuals can be supportive agents in the quest for spontaneous consent. So spontaneous consent में traditional intellectuals का बहुत important role है. While organic intellectuals arise from within a class to articulate its worldview and leads its struggle for hegemony. Successful class जो होती है वो इंटीग्रेट करती है both को in forming a historical block. So Gramsci एक Italian philosopher जो है, जो एक political theorist जो है, introduced the concept of organic intellectuals a part of his broader theory of cultural hegemony. Gramsci notion जो है organic intellectuals का वो चैलेंज करता है ट्रेडिशनल अंडरस्टैंडिंग है जो intellectuals की. Intellectuals are not limited to a specific class, can emerge from any social group like Ambedkar. With this we will say that Gramsci highlighted the connection between the intellectual and the social group, and these organic intellectuals are shaped by the specific historical and material conditions of their social group like Ambedkar ji. So their experience, their ideas shaped by the specific historical and material conditions of the Dalits, and ideas perspective are influenced by their socio-economic and cultural experience. So in this sense, organic intellectuals are more closely connected to their lived realities and struggles of their communities. So these organic intellectuals generating the common sense, that is hegemony, counter hegemony. So there is an ideological domination or hegemony which refers to the dominance of one social group over the other through the consent or voluntary participation of the subordinate groups. So simply, they provide leadership and they develop a counter hegemony consciousness among the subordinate. So here Gramsci suggesting the working class to develop a coalition of classes, coalition of subaltern classes. Just like capitalism, capitalists maintain its domination by coalition of classes who may not have identical but common interest. So with this coalition of subaltern classes have some organic intellectuals of their own, like technician, supervisor, and some traditional ones also. Thus working class need to fight at two levels: war of position, war of maneuver. Gandhi movement was also Gramsci movement, as it was a long drawn out struggle against the British hegemony, with Gandhi as the organic intellectual of the Indian masses. So he argued that this collective effort is essential for building a transformative political project capable of challenging the existing power structure and creating a more just and equitable society. Gramsci's concept of organic intellectual has been influential in critical theory, cultural studies, and various movements. So, in various movements, you have to mention about this counter hegemony part, leadership part, and organic intellectual rising from the group within. So, coalition of subaltern class. So, Gramsci suggests national popular means old philosophy is obsolete, obsolete, and hard to understand. Hence, Communist Party need to communicate the ideas to masses in the language they understand. So Gandhi, like Gandhi popularized Satyagraha and Ramrajya, in the same way he is telling this. And how? Because all men are intellectuals, but all don't perform the role of intellectual. Means every work requires some amount of intellectual labor. No work is fully manual. However, some intellectual specific function of manufacturing consent. So specific function of manufacturing consent, where you are trying to communicate the idea to masses in the language they understand, local language. But here we also criticize like ambiguity of class position, like there is no clear criteria for determining who qualifies as an organic intellectual, and this ambiguity can lead to subjective interpretation and difficulties in applying the concept in a consistent and meaningful manner. and also by trying intellectuals solely to their social group. It risks overlooking the diversity of perspective, like overlook intersectionality, caste, class, ethnicity. Within a group, there can be n number of groups, subgroups. So potentially disregarding individual agency and independent thinking. So whenever there is a something about ideology, I will say ideology is neither a false consciousness nor a system of ideas, according to Gramsci. So just opposite to Marx, but conceived as lived habitual social practice. It creates the terrain on which a man move, acquire consciousness of their position, struggle. So classical Marxist, उनके लिए ideology a part of superstructure, a mere reflection of economic base, and ideology played no role in history. But Gramsci rectified it by introducing ideology, and Gramsci's concept of ideology was instrumental in his attempt to re-emphasize the importance of superstructure in maintenance and domination of capitalist class. So according to him, perpetuation of dominant class role is achieved largely through means, consensual means, and this consent is built by whom? Intellectuals. How? By reinforcing the ideology, by building common sense. Thus, a consensual culture developed in which working class start identifying its own good with the good of capitalist class, and thus itself maintain its status quo. And also there is an important role played by the institution of civil society like family, search, education system. In this context, he recognized the role played by the civil society as consent to domination and is defined as a sphere of hegemony. Means the role of civil society is also important to create the consent. Now we will understand the explanation of history. For Marx, historical materialism, economic structure, basic structure, we all know. Another superstructure, no independent existence, root in base. Okay. So there is a change in structure simply means the economic structure changing, and one revolution, all the things which change automatically because superstructure has no its own existence. But in case of Gramsci, Marx not giving the in importance to superstructure taken for granted. So no need to understand the role of superstructure in understanding the history. So he is like a theoretician, Theoretician of superstructure. So impact of Gramsci treatment of superstructure of Marxism is like Marx monocategorical explanation, and for change in history, economic determinism. And these terms are active for Marx, and he Gramsci saved Marxism from economic determinism, taking into account of role of other factors like superstructure model also. He attempted to break the economic determinism of traditional Marxist through thought, and so he considered as a key neo-Marxist. So he is a key neo-Marxist because he is re emphasizing the role of superstructure and not just focus on economic like economic determinism. So Gramsci model history like a three-layer model. We had no superstructure, basic structure, and economic structure that is the basic, and civil society and state. So that are integral stated. So institutions of superstructure are not just a reflection but superstructure in its but structure in itself. So he is a structuralism approach in social science influenced by modern philosophy. Marx also structuralist to understand society scientifically tried to understand the basic structure of society. Where here Gramsci emphasized the role of superstructure is also important, and in this three layer the important role of civil society because civil society getting the consent, building maintaining the hegemony of the capitalism. So civil society means as formulated by Accelerated EAGLED1, the whole range of institutions intermediate between state and economy. It is a main area where hegemony is to be constituted. The whole range of institutions intermediated between state and autonomy. It is a main area where hegemony is to be constituted. So role of civil society appears as neutral but more closely aligned with the base act as cushion or fortress to protect the interest of bourgeois class. So civil society, if more free, different to bring revolution. But if civil society is suppressed, easier to bring revolution. So this way there are two states where civil society is suppressed it is transparent state. Where it is more free, it is opaque state. And in the opaque state, different turbulent revolution. So in simple words, civil society play a key role in maintaining the hegemony of bourgeois class. First left line to protect capitalists. Only when civil society fails, that is after the war of position, the state comes into picture. That direct attack on state, war of maneuver. But unlike Althusser, Gramsci emphasized struggle. He noted that common sense is not something rigid and immobile, but is continually transforming itself. As Fiske puts it, consent must be constantly worn and reworn. So, war opposition equals to long-term struggle in cultural ideological front, winning consent by building alternative values and worldviews. So, it is not something that अगर एक बारी हो गया तो हो गया. It is very consent by alternative values and worldviews. It is like consent must be constantly worn and reworn. Common sense is not something rigid and immobile, but is continually transforming itself. So it is emphasized struggle. So what civil society do? It manufacturing consent. So here power is the ability to get something done from others, like to power fear and love, power of coercion, power attraction, power of coercion like through police, and attraction by civil society. So power of attraction, something played by the civil society, and building the hegemony. The hegemony is an ideology, soft power, and building a way of life, like capitalism as a way of life. It's a soft power. You can't think out of it. It is becoming the common sense. So workers don't hate capitalism. Even they hate that they are not capitalist. So people want to be capitalist. They want to be more rich. So attraction toward bourgeois way of life, control over the thought or process of workers. Value of dominant class become common sense. Hegemony determines the limit of common sense. So it determines your limit of common sense. You can't think out of it. When attraction toward capitalism can't revolt against it, therefore hegemony is manufacture of consent. In this, the Perry Anderson argues Gramsci hegemony means the ideological subordination of the working class. So hegemony means the subordination because you are not. It is determining the limit of your common sense. So that's why it is the ideological subordination of the working class by the bourgeois, which enable it to rule by consent. He argues that the entire function of the state has been transformed. The state has become an educator. Educator means it is putting the values inside the minds of people and controlling them by building the common sense. So according to Gramsci, hegemony operates on two levels: political and cultural. Political hegemony involves the exercise of state power and control of institutions to maintain the dominance of the ruling class. So state is controlling the institutions, building a cultural system and a cultural hegemony on the other hand through the construction of a dominant ideology that become pervasive in society and widely accepted common sense. Simple means controlling the institution, education, media to shape the cultural and intellectual landscape. Hence, the superstructure important in sustaining the base of dominant class. So, superstructure playing the role in sustaining the base of dominant class. How? By the civil society, manufacturing consent, controlling of the institutions. So, Gramsci recognized the hegemony is not a static, monolithic phenomenon; it is a dynamic process. So, therefore, the historical block in Gramsci way of theorizing how economic structure, political institutions, and ideologies fuse into stable hegemonies, and how revolutionary change require a new block combining material power, organic intellectuals, and consent-based leadership. And here comes the Stephen Gill, like historical block equals to mix of power, institution, idea, creating through conscious effort, not automatically. And SSO1 as a SSO1 as a double S double one, not just a collision can have a subblocks agree and industrial with contradiction. Still, still all allied to the main hegemonic class. So, in simple words, we have to create a historical block where economic structure, political institution, ideology all fuse into stable hegemonies. So, revolution got to Gramsci like material revolution. will know which will make no difference without mental revolution. So if you want to do the mental revolution, you have to do two process, like war abolition and war maneuver. War abolition, like again the civil society developing counter hegemony, hegemony of subaltern class by building a historical bloc, and moral maneuver like direct attack on state after the counter hegemony is established. So Gandhi movement is also like this. In this respect, we will say about something critical theorist Robert Cox has described war opposition as a process which slowly build up the strength of the social foundation of new order. So this to build the strength of the social foundation of new order by creating alternative institutions, intellectual resources for subversion of hegemony. The Gramsci way of position was employed in the Indian national movement to carry out at the hegemonic struggle against the mighty British rule. So Gramsci used the term war opposition or war maneuver to indicate two different phases in the class struggle and thus approved a strategy for revolutionary to take. So war opposition is struggle of influence, indirect and gradual. War of maneuver, MANOEUVRE, struggle of force, direct, immediate. यहाँ से होता खत्म ग्रामसी और